and welcome back to the Kalopsia podcast. I'm your host, Sydney, and thank you for clicking on this week's YouTube video, episode, wherever you listen to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. So today is actually the day I'm heading back home to New York, so I'm pre-recording this episode. I will say that. But this week, something crazy happened, something big happened, and it goes into today's topic, which is knowing to ask for help. As a person growing up, I'm an only child raised by a single mother. I feel like I grew up with a lot of independence and for a craving for independence, especially when you are, growing up in New York City, you want to go out there, you want to be an adult, you want to be an adult really quickly, and you grow up fast in New York, especially given my circumstances growing up. So with that in mind, I grew up with this goal to become this super independent person that doesn't need to depend on anyone, who can make her dreams happen for herself, and who doesn't need to depend on anybody else, so that I can't get disappointed, I can't be let down, And so that was always the way that I set out forth into the world, right? This was always my goal. But when I was 19, I've talked about it before, but now more people know, right? Because when I was 19, a lot of things went wrong in my familial life, right? Regarding my mom's workplace and her inability to have access to her salary, her pension, her time off, pay, or her sick pay. Literally everything was cut off. And so my mom works for the United Nations. So the way that it works is that you're an expatriate. So you can't find another job because you're not legally allowed to work in this country. You're allowed to work for the United Nations, which is a stateless organization. It doesn't belong to any country. So with this issue that arose, right, with her unable to have access to literally any source of income, everything fell onto me. And so I knew from that moment, everything comes down to me. I need to be I need to be the pillar of calm, of security, and responsibility. That is who I was meant to embody, given these circumstances, right? I wasn't really allowed to stumble or mess up or, just not work for a month or just do anything that a kid usually does, right? I wasn't allowed to do any of those things. Not that my mom told me I can't, but I understood that anything I do is going to have repercussions, So growing up, that was always kind of the thing that occurred. When I was 19, everything really became more cemented. It became more cemented that this independence that I have is even more important to build upon. It's even more important for me to be this really independent person who can stand on her own, because I no longer have a safety blanket to fall back on. I can no longer go home to my mom and say, please, I didn't work enough shifts this month. I'm not going to make my rent. Please help me out. There was no safety blanket of that regard. Soon, I found myself in this almost hyper-independent state. I found myself in this hyper-independent state in which any sort of issue that arose, I would hold it in. I would hold it to myself, keep it to myself. And I would wonder why I had these, I was walking around with a pit of anxiety in my chest. Walking around, I was like, okay, I can handle this, I can do this, it's gonna be fine, I can handle it. You can handle it. But at a certain point, you're gonna break. And I'll tell you what that looks like. When you're in this state of hyper-independence, it's difficult to find joy or to be easily amused, to easily enjoy life in general. It's hard to do that because everything seems so serious. Everything seems so life or death. The world becomes very black and white. And that's that was my experience with it. That was my experience with hyper-independence and seeing that play out. And sure, I would lean on my friends when it came to my emotions, or lean on my friends and say, it's a really tough time, but, I can handle it. It's this narrative that you keep saying to others. And the thing is, other people are also going to listen to what you say. People are not mind readers. And let me actually read a passage from that book, Take Note by Tony Tone, that I brought up in the episode past. So from the Take Note book by Tony Tone, she writes, to open up the chapter, ask for help when you need it. Some people aren't good at asking for help because they're so used to being the helper. Throughout their life, they've experienced an unbalanced give and take, so their instinct is usually, I'll figure it out on my own. Self-reliance is all they've ever known. Okay, so when we're talking about this effect that this self-reliance, this hyper-independence has not only on you, but also those around you, let's bring in Tony Tone with a quote. I spent so much of my adolescence and young adult life being self-reliant in my own way that I just couldn't fathom the thought of seeking out assistance. It wasn't until one day in my late 20s that I had a total meltdown. I was in my family home with my siblings and parents and was completely overwhelmed that day. Before I knew it, I couldn't hold the tears in and broke down about feeling underappreciated. At the time, I felt like my loved ones expected and got so much from me, while I expected and got so much less from them. It wasn't until my sister said, "But Tony, when do you ever ask for help?" In that instant, I realized that what I viewed as an unbalanced give and take was somewhat fed by my unwillingness to speak up about how I was feeling and my reflex to get everything done on my own. Now, the thing is here, you might be thinking to yourself, yes, a lot of the time, you have to be able to be that first person to go and take a step towards other people and say, hey guys, I need help. But it's also why don't you guys notice that I need help? Can't you tell? Can't you tell that I'm actually struggling and you see everything that's on my plate? Yeah, I'm telling you I'm fine. I'm telling everybody I'm fine and I can handle it and it's going to be perfectly fine. But people are not mind readers, and so let's grab another quote here. Now, one might argue that I shouldn't have to speak up and people should consider how I'm coping when it comes to all that I do. But the truth is that people are not mind readers. While it's considerate to take time out to check on others, not doing so doesn't automatically make someone uncaring or malicious. Everyone is going through their own set of challenges, and sometimes their lack of checking in is purely a result of just being so busy with their own day-to-day. The thing is that people are not going to try to reach out, try to be that safety blanket for you if they are not even aware of it. And I think a lot of the time, especially when you're in this hyper independent state of mind, your world feels so big. It feels like a rock laying on you, a rock on your chest. But it's I've got to handle it. I have no other choice but to be able to handle it. But you do have a choice. You have a choice to ask your friends, to go to others and say, I'm actually really struggling right now. Is it okay if I just talk to you about it? Even if they can't do anything about it, is it okay if I just talk to you about it? Maybe just talking about it is going to help you, build from there. Not even just in the sense of finding a new solution or maybe they open your eyes up to a different route that you can take that might alleviate some of these pressures. But it's also about learning to build that muscle, building the muscle of leaning on others, of using this community that you've taken so much time and effort to build and curate so that you are surrounded by people who only want the best for you and love you and support you. But what is the point of having all this community if you are only feeding into it, trying to help others all the time, but then you can never take a seat and let yourself be helped? But there are a few different reasons, I think, that stand in the way of our asking for help. And I think there are a big three. So the first is pride. So this week, I started a GoFundMe for myself and my mother, because, as I've mentioned on the podcast before, I'm in between jobs and I am onboarding at the second one, but there's a 2-week period where I'm just not going to be working until they match me with a case or anything like that. So it's been a tough time, especially with Christmas. I've bought all the gifts for all my friends and now it's okay, rent's due. How am I going to be able to make it? So then I was telling to myself, I was talking to my friends. And I was I don't know how I'm going to swing it. I can move it out of my savings. It might take a week or so, but that might not match up. And I was this is not going to work. I don't think it's going to, I really don't think, I don't think I'm going to be able to swing it. Right. And I'm telling this to my friends. I'm telling this to my mom's friends as well. And a few people come back to me and they say, Sydney, start a GoFundMe. Really just start a GoFundMe. Even if it's small, it can still help. And people want to support you. People do want to support you. So I did. And it was double the limit that I even put on there. And I'm so thankful. Thank you. If you guys are watching and you donated to that GoFundMe, thank you so much, because it's unfathomable to me, actually, that many people, I can't even, it hasn't even hit me. And all the kind messages, a lot of people that couldn't donate, like a lot of people sent me really kind messages. And even that helps, honestly. It really does help just to see recognition for the sacrifices that I've made and see people want to help me knowing all that I've given to it, you know? So I think that was one of the most beautiful things ever. But I didn't do it for a very long time. And the biggest reason was pride. I realized at the end of the day, it was a pride issue. Because when you're like wanting to ask, especially with a GoFundMe, that's literally asking for money. Or if you are wanting to reach out and say, like, do you have any connections? Like, do you have anybody who can help me find a job or anything like that? Like, these are things that can all help us. It can help us all, right? To do that sort of networking, or maybe it is a GoFundMe in that case, or anything like that. A lot of the time, what's holding you back from asking for that help is pride. And you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm supposed to be this like really like accomplished, you know, independent person. I don't need anybody else. I don't need anybody to support me. I can stand on my own. I'm a pillar. I can handle it. Right? And that's pride talking. That's the ego talking. But at the end of the day, you have to put that ego aside and think to yourself, what are the concrete facts here? Am I going to be able to swing it, or am I not going to be able to swing it? If the answer is no, you ask for help. You don't try to stretch it. You don't try to run yourself into the ground just to prove to yourself, because nobody else is paying attention that hard to whatever you're doing. As we just saw in this book, you know, everybody's focused on their own day-to-day life. But now the second big thing is fear, right? We are so fearful that maybe you put yourself out there and you're going to get let down. Maybe you put yourself out there and you are told, oh my gosh, like how could you even ask for help? Like, you should be able to do this for yourself. That negative reaction, right? That's what we're afraid of. But we also have to remember that that's a service to us as well. If you go to someone and you ask somebody for help and they come back to you with a snarky comment or a mean comment or saying something negative about you or negative about your capacity for something, negative about your intelligence or anything like that, that's gonna make it even. It's the trash taking out itself, right? That's what they always say with relationships, right? If somebody cheats on you, it's like, perfect. You've taken out the trash for me. I don't need to know anything else. You've just shown yourself your true colors. Thank you and goodbye. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. But you can now go ahead and leave. So it's the same thing when somebody's coming to you and saying, oh my gosh, like, how could you even ask? Like, you're terrible. Like, you should be able to do this by yourself. Okay, that's your perspective. Have a nice life. Thank you so much. I've had a nice relationship with you for the past couple years. But I think that's going to be it for me. You know, like, you don't need to surround yourself with people who are going to drop you in your time of need. And for that reason, fear is really just something that you are building up inside of your mind. But let's see what Tony Tone is saying about fear and asking for help. But I also do a lot for myself out of fear. Fear of relying on people, fear of being disappointed, fear of not being taken seriously should I ask for help, fear of appearing incompetent for requiring support, and fear of regret. Before even attempting to ask for help, I would tell myself things like, nobody cares about my problems, or everyone thinks I don't need help, so why would they give it to me? Much of my self-sufficiency was heightened by fear, as well as the side effect of bearing the brunt of responsibility as the oldest of the family. So this just goes to show that it's not a unique experience. It's not that your fear, it's not something that is showing up only for you. A lot of us carry this fear. But the fact that everybody else carries this fear just shows that it's not something to worry about. And honestly, sometimes the things that inspire fear out of you are the right step to take because it's pushing you out of your comfort zone and something productive might come from it. Unless it's something that is threatening your safety or anything like that. And I think the last one that is really effective in holding us back from asking for help is shame. I think that shame and pride go hand in hand, but I think we carry a lot of shame in the prospect of asking for help. in the prospect of letting down this facade, like Tony mentioned, this facade of self-sufficiency, of being this pillar. You're ashamed of letting that facade fall away, showing people that you're actually human. You're not this superhuman, capable of everything, afraid of nothing. It's almost like we carry this shame inside. It's like, wait, but I'm not actually the person that I showed everybody I was. I'm not actually this crazy hyper independent person. Like, I actually do need help sometimes. But there is no shame in that. Because everybody needs that. Everybody needs that give and take, that balance. Because the second that it strikes out of balance for too long, then you get overwhelmed and you have a meltdown. Just like we saw in here. But let this week and my GoFundMe be an example for you. I'm not forcing you to do anything here. I'm not forcing you to ask for help. It has the potential to actually change your life for the better. And I'm not talking about only in big ways. But if you find yourself very used to internalizing your thoughts and holding that inside, and maybe somebody makes you angry, or somebody does something bad to you, and you're like, oh, but I can't go over there and like stand up for myself, maybe I'll just let it slide this time. No, if you can't do it for yourself, go and ask for help. Now I want to read a little snippet again, just in case you're thinking, surely not, surely I can't do that, surely not. Not sure you can get better at asking for help? For me, the first step towards battling my reluctance was considering the benefits. How will their support benefit me in my situation? Understanding the benefits helps us to validate the importance of asking. And I love that. I really do love that. Because a lot of this, it's a mental block and it's habituation. You're used to not asking for help. You're used to relying only on yourself. You're used to being that pillar, being that block, even if it is a facade, you're used to embodying that facade. And so at the end of the day, it's just how to forget a habit and building a new one. So just like she said, make it almost like a substitute behavior, right? When you're going to, say, oh, I'm okay, actually. Somebody asks you like, hey, are you okay? Like, or do you need help with that? It's like, no, like right when you're about to say no, just go, wait a minute. Okay. Let me think about it. Can I do this by myself? How will their presence help me? Is it going to make this go more efficiently? Am I going to be less stressed? How will it negatively impact them? Well, they're asking if I need help, aren't they? So they must be willing to help. Go through all these steps inside your mind. Go through the pros and cons, weigh it out. Because I do really think that the pros of accepting that help are going to outweigh the cons. Well, I think that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening to the Kalopsia pod this week, all about finding the beauty in everything. And we are finding the beauty in asking for help this week. And it was a big lesson for me this week because I wanted to do this topic a couple weeks ago, I'll be honest with you. And I was sitting down and I was like, okay, like doing my little notes, and I was like, Sydney, you don't have much experience in this. You really don't. I think I've had one other big experience where I had something really not treacherous, but like a big situation happening with my family. And I was like, I don't know how to handle this by myself. I need help. I need all of my friends to come and help me, please. And they did. And it was wonderful. And at the end of the day, I ended the day laughing instead of sobbing. And I was just looking around and I was so happy by every person that was around me. And I was like, it just makes you so much more thankful for those friendships around you. And you really, it's allowing yourself to be loved is what it is. It's allowing yourself to feel appreciated and to feel loved and to feel supported. And we all deserve that happiness. We all deserve that privilege. So don't stand in your own way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you guys want to reach out or leave a comment, leave a review, please do. And then you can reach out at kalopsiapod, KALOPSIAPOD on Instagram and TikTok. And then at Sydney Jotita, SYDNEYDJOTITA on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I hope that you guys really enjoyed this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening, watching, whichever. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.